Marian Moore's importance to poetry and American literature. Who was Marian Moore? Marian Moore was born near St. Louis, Missouri on November 15, 1887. She moved and grew up in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Moore studied at Bryn Mawr College, where she published one of her first poems, a jellyfish, in the college's literary magazine. In 1918, Moore moved with her mother to New York City, where she began publishing some more of her poems. According to the Poetry Foundation, in 1951, Moore's collected poems won both the Pulitzer Prize in Poetry and the National Book Award. She was a well-known poet during her time and won many awards and medals, including an honorary doctorate from Harvard University. Moore died in New York City on February 5, 1972, at the age of 84. Marian Moore's Poems to a Snail and Poetry.
To a Snail by Marian Moore. If compression is the first grace of style, you have it. Contractility is a virtue as modesty is a virtue. It is not the acquisition of any one thing that is able to adorn, or the incidental quality that occurs as a concomitant of something well said, that we value in style, but the principle that is hid, in the absence of feet, a method of conclusions, a knowledge of principles, in the curious phenomenon of your occipital horn.
Poetry. I, too, dislike it. There are things that are important beyond all this fiddle. Reading it, however, with a perfect contempt for it, one discovers in it, after all, a place for the genuine. Hands that can grasp, eyes that can dilate, hair that can rise if it must. These things are important not because a high-sounding interpretation can be put upon them, but because they are useful. When they become so derivative as to become unintelligible, the same thing may be said for all of us, that we do not admire what we cannot understand. The bat, holding on upside down or in quest of something to eat. Elephants pushing, a wild horse taking a roll, a tireless wolf under a tree, the immovable critic twitching his skin like a horse that feels a flea, the baseball fan, the statistician. Nor is it valid to discriminate against business documents and school books. All these phenomena are important. One must make a distinction, however, when dragged into prominence by half-poets. The result is not poetry, nor till the poets among us can be literalists of the imagination, above insolence and triviality, and can present for inspection imaginary gardens with real toads in them. Shall we have it? In the meantime, if you demand on the one hand the raw material of poetry in all its rawness, and that which is on the other hand genuine, you are interested in poetry.
The major themes of Moore's poems. The major themes of Marian Moore's poems To a Snail and poetry have some similarities. The poem To a Snail is Moore's way of saying what she thinks is valuable when writing. Poetry is about what makes a poem important or even a poem at all. What these poems illustrate about American culture and values. Moore's poems illustrate American culture and values because her literary works helped bring a change to poetry. She helped other writers break the mold of what they thought they should write about and let them express themselves in their own way. Why these poems withstand the test of time in American literature. Marian Moore was a modernist, and you can see this through her poetry. As a female writer during this time, it was harder to gain recognition. Moore was considered somewhat of a celebrity and is still recognized as an important American poet. How the poems relate to Americans today. Her poems relate to Americans today because she brought about a change to poetry that can still be seen. Moore paved the way for more modernist writing styles and wanted writers to be able to express themselves. Why I chose these poems. The reason I chose to discuss Marianne Moore's poetry is because I feel she changed the way that many viewed poetry. She wanted anyone to be able to write it and not feel constricted and follow certain rules. She considers writing an art and feels people should express their emotions and write about whatever they want.